Welcome to another episode of Wisdom Wednesday. I'm Martha Mock, your host and the community captain of Yeah the Girl 40 Plus. Today, we're going to talk about children. They are very, very close to our heart, and we always want to do our best for them. However, it is the reality that some children do have some challenges. As parents, we do our best to try to understand and find the best way to help them. Our topic today is understanding dyslexia. So today I have a speech pathologist, Elsa, here to help us. How are you? Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, no worries. Nice to meet you.
Please tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. I'm a speech pathologist based in Melbourne. I've been working as a speech pathologist for close to 30 years now, and I run a small private practice in Melbourne called Little Voices Speech Pathology. And for the last probably 10 to 15 years, I've been working predominantly with kids with literacy difficulties. And over my time of working with these kids with literacy difficulties, I have become very involved with in the area of dyslexia. So I did a little bit of extra training in the UK to be able to identify and diagnose dyslexia. And now it is my bread and butter. It's everything that I do. I work with kids with dyslexia every day and work on the entire, like the whole holistic approach to supporting these kids, because for children with dyslexia, it's not just about difficulties with learning to read. And we are very familiar with, as for kids with dyslexia, they do have difficulties learning how to read, but there's just so much more that goes along with having these literacy difficulties. It impacts their social skills and their mental health, and it impacts the family. And so rather than just teaching the kids how to read, I also want to sort of support them throughout everything else that comes along with having dyslexia as well.
So tell us a little bit more about dyslexia for those of us that who may not understand the terminology. What does that look like? How do you identify it?
Yeah, so dyslexia is actually a language difficulty. It's based on from difficulties actually the awareness of the speech sound system of language. So the term is phonological awareness. So it stems from processing the speech sound system of language. Phonological awareness essentially means speech sounds. So it's to do with an understanding of how the speech sound system works and then connecting that with the written system of language. So often we can see some early indicators even when children haven't yet been taught how to read. Things like they might, not pick up nursery rhymes like other kids do. They might have difficulty learning some of the abstract concepts like colours. They might have difficulty learning vocabulary and other kinds of concepts as well. So there's some of the indicators we might see before a child even starts to learn how to read. But then once a child does start learning how to read, it's really that difficulty between linking the sounds of our spoken language to the letters. So in the early years, that's really the difficulty that they have learning their letter sound links.
Mm.
And they also take a lot longer to recognize, if they've seen the word the over and over and over and over, most kids will recognize it after a few exposures to the word. But kids with dyslexia just take that and they need that many more times of seeing the word before they recognize it and can say what the word is. So there's many different sort of indicators, but it really impacts their reading fluency. So they're often very slow with reading. And it impacts their ability to decode words they've never seen before. So that's what we tend to see. It also impacts spelling.
I see, I see. What sort of age do we starting to know about that? Because I feel like that as an adult, I may have some of the issues as well into it, especially coming from a non-English speaking background. So
Yes.
what sort of an age that parents can actually start noticing and get them help early?
Yeah, so there's actually a myth that's circulated quite a bit that you can't identify dyslexia until the age of 7 or 8. And that's
Mm.
not actually true. You can identify dyslexia through a formal assessment at the age after a child has had 6 months of teaching. So once they've had 6 months in the foundation year of school, we can then accurately identify whether they have dyslexia or not.
So does that mean like year one or kindergarten?
Yeah, so if, in some states, the first year of school where they're actually formally taught how to learn reading, sometimes that's called kindergarten. So if that's the first year of school, then it's that year. Where I am in Victoria, kindergarten is the preschool year, and our first year of school is called prep. So it's whatever that first year of school is when they start to formally be taught how to read and spell.
Mm. I see, I see. So, if your child has been diagnosed with it, and what are some of the effective strategy to support your children both at home or in the classroom? Because they may feel embarrassed, they may feel scared, and how do parents actually overcome that and communicate with other like people that can support them?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really important that children with dyslexia are taught to read using an approach that's known as an explicit and structured phonics approach. And what that means is that they are explicitly taught the relationship between the letters and sounds. So we might start with a sound and say the sound is ah, and then you link it with the letter symbol that represents that sound. So they're explicitly taught the connection between the spoken sounds and the letters. They're also explicitly taught the area that I mentioned before, which is phonological awareness. Phonological awareness includes things like an understanding that words are made up of individual sounds. So, for example, the word cat is made up of 3 sounds, k, a, t. So they know that there are individual sounds within that word, and then each spoken sound within that word is related to a letter that we use to spell that word. So they're explicitly taught that relationship. So that's one of the phonological awareness skills, is to know individual speech sounds like k, t.
Mm.
The other one is that is used very commonly when learning to read is called blending. So when you tell a child individual sounds, can they blend those sounds together to create the word? So if you say to the child, cat, do they realize that that makes the word cat? So they're the two major phonological awareness skills that are explicitly taught to children in the first year of school, and they heavily impact on the development of reading and spelling.
Oh, I see, I see. Because like that was very interesting because in Asia we don't have that learning as well. And then when
Mm.
we come over here, that's why even yesterday I was learning to speak the word woman and women.
Yes, the difference. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is hard. Like, 'cause
Yes.
that's what it is in there. But this is so interesting. So how do a parent reach out for help and get their kids help from their school?
Yeah, so there are some schools that initially, when I started this work 10, 15 years ago, very few schools were actually teaching kids to read using this approach. And over the last, particularly the last 5 years, at least in my area, more and more schools are actually teaching these skills in the classroom. So, one of the things that parents could do is to speak to the school and say, what is your approach to the teaching of reading? Are you using what is considered to be an explicit and structured phonics approach? And schools will know what that is. If they're not using an approach like that, then they're more likely to be using an approach which is called balanced literacy, is sort of what it tends to be. And the parents who have their children in schools that are using balanced literacy will know what I'm talking about when I say in the early years of a balanced literacy, like in the first couple of years of a balanced literacy classroom, the types of books that your child will be bringing home are books where the same phrase is on every page and only 1 or 2 words are different. And the child needs to use the support of the picture to help them work out what that different word is. So it might be like, a story like, I like something. And so
Mm,
it's always I like is the first 2 words on every page. And the
mm,
child isn't actually able to read. So it might be I like ice
mm,
cream.
mm,
And the child isn't actually able to read the word ice cream. They need to look at the picture to predict what that word is going to be. Now, that is not how children learn how to read, but unfortunately, it is heavily embedded in many, many schools across Australia. It's slowly changing. The kinds of books that we want the kids to be bringing home are books where they've learnt maybe 6 different letter sound combinations. So they might have learned that the letter A represents A, the letter T represents T, the letter S represents S. And by
mm,
learning a combination of those, they can read words like, and maybe T, yeah, T, S, P, those are just a couple. Then there's so many different words that they can actually use what we call decoding to figure out that word. So if they see the letters SAT, they know SAT, SAT. So they can read words like Sam, SAT,
mm,
Tim, SAT. So it's very simple in the very early stages, but what they're actually doing is reading it, not using the pictures to help them. So they're called decodable books because they are decodable. You can decode those, every word within that book. So that's what you'd hope that your child is bringing home in the early stages. If they're bringing those home, then the school is on the right track and they're using the right kind of approach to the teaching of reading. And that approach to the teaching of reading is what every child with dyslexia needs. Some children can learn how to read, and it actually is only about 60%. 60% of children can learn how to read when they're given the balanced literacy, where they're using the picture to help support. Only about 60% of children learn to read that way. And yet, so many schools are still using that approach. Whereas the explicit and structured phonics approach supports 95% of kids. And the only ones who are not going to be learning how to read with that still need the same approach, just more intensively, just more and more and more repetition of it. So when we have 95% of kids learning how to read using a particular approach and the schools aren't using that, it's like, it's so very, very frustrating for parents because that's the only approach that will work for children with dyslexia. They won't learn how to read using any other approach.
So for parents that who decided to get external help, like from yourself, what are the procedure like? How do they find you? Like we have women in the group that is all over Australia. Like, do you do online classes or something like that? Please tell us a
Yeah.
bit more.
So at the moment, we just have sessions here in our clinic. But what I'm doing at the moment is I'm running an online course for parents. And so what that online course will be, it'll be going further into what actually is dyslexia and what are the underlying the underlying core deficit areas in dyslexia. It'll take them through, all the different things that they need to know to understand how best to support their child. And then that will also give them ways to find people in their area. So I know a number of different people who do online. We haven't taken that on board here yet, but in terms of the tutoring, but I'm definitely doing the online support for parents at the moment.
That sounds amazing because I understand how difficult it is sometimes just to learn how to pronounce correctly because like even for someone like me who is a lot older, I even interested to actually learning the basic sounds so I can pronounce myself a little bit better.
Yeah.
And this is just one thing that I found it very, very interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, a lot of the time, what I get in my clinic, I don't get kids often coming to me until they're in upper primary school. And, by that stage, they've had years and years and years of failure, essentially. They're anxious, they're frustrated, they don't understand why they haven't been able to learn how to read like their peers have. They avoid it. And I've had one of my clients say to me, he'd rather be the naughty child than for his peers to realize that he doesn't know how to read. He'd rather be
Yeah,
naughty than dumb, is his
yeah.
choice. So he would be naughty to get sent out of the room and sit at the principal's office rather than his peers to see that he doesn't know how to read and then to call him dumb.
No,
So,
that's really sad.
and that's how they feel, the internal struggles that these kids go through because it's not picked up early enough. And if it's picked up early enough, they can become very successful readers and spellers. They just need to be given the right approach and the right teaching.
Oh, that is such a great hope for parents because I think a lot of us, when we come to kids, we just don't know where to turn to or who to turn to that
Yeah.
can actually help us when we have situation like this. And that's why we appreciate you for giving us your time today to come in and talk about the situation because they will really help a lot of struggling parents thinking that they're not being a good mom, they're not being a good parent because they just don't know how to support their kid.
They don't know what to do. And unfortunately,
Mm.
even doing a Google search, there's just so much information and it's overwhelming. And a lot of it actually isn't even true. It's not evidence-based. There's so many
Mm.
myths. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult for parents to just know where to go. And the schools don't know either. So, yeah.
That is so good that we have you on this space here. So please tell us, how do our parents reach out to you?
Sure. So my business is Little Voices. So Little Voices Speech Pathology. So they could just Google that. The website is littlevoices.net.au. And my course, which is called Navigating Dyslexia, is on the website, so they can find more information there. I can give you the links for all of that if you wanted to put it in a post or something. And I
Definitely.
will just let you know the other really, really good source of information for families all around Australia. There is a charity called Code Red Dyslexia Network, and it's read as in READ, which is the past tense of read, playing
Uh,
words to show how difficult the English language is. But that's a charity that I'm part of. I'm a founding member of that charity, and it's got just a wealth of, that anything that you find on the website of that is going to be evidence-based and current and exactly what you need to know.
oh, that is so beautiful. We'll be definitely sharing that information, and I will invite you to come onto our magazine to write an article for us, so more of our reader can actually receive this vital message for their family.
Beautiful. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Wisdom Wednesday. I have learned so much, and now that seeing the light and the hope that the children can have, it is going to give me a very, very beautiful, beautiful day after this. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you once again for joining us on Wisdom Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye for now.